Sandhya, there has been a lot of buzz and talk about the most important factor in the family courts today has been the angle of divorce and, of course, the alimony angle, right? So, pointing towards that is what our discussion today is going to be based off, right? So, when the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos remarried in June this year, the media frenzy about his prenuptial agreement rather than the wedding itself, this assumed the significance for two important reasons. So, Bezos' previous marriage was not governed by any kind of a prenuptial agreement, and the divorce made his former wife, in fact, richer by at least 4 to 5% of Jeff's fortune itself.
Right.
So this time he became very cautious, right? So this prenup is touted to be one of the most complex agreements containing exhaustive details relating to his wealth, to children, to charity, etc. Mm-hmm. So it is in this context that we want to look at the concept of prenuptial agreements, especially in India and around the world.
Right. You said it very well. Prenuptial agreements. First, we need to understand what a prenuptial agreement is. Simply put, it is an agreement in the nature of a contract. Okay, it's a prenuptial agreement, popularly known as a prenup in short form. Now, what does this agreement do? It's an agreement that couples enter into before they get married, containing and detailing terms and conditions that will govern them in the event of either death or divorce. Okay, mainly, for example, how assets, properties, business interests will be divided in case of divorce or separation, responsibilities for debt and liabilities, terms for alimony and maintenance in the event of divorce. Also, as you mentioned, clauses relating to children, their custody, their property, education, and their inheritance. So typically, it contains details relating to financial obligations and responsibilities during and after a marriage.
Correct. Sandhya, now let's kind of date back to history, okay? So the concept of documenting the details before the marriage dates more than like 2000 years. It's from Egypt. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
When the rulers and kings documented the details of wealth before a marriage. Right. So the formal concept of prenups itself evolved in the early 80s in the US. Driven by the changing and dynamics of the society, there was substantial increase of women who were entering the workforce. Yes. So there was increase in marriages and consequent increase, if you see, as we all know, is in the divorce rates, right? So in 1983, the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act was enacted as a multi-state law governing the prenuptial agreements, right? Oh. And then a host of other countries, in fact, recognize the concept of prenups, especially Australia, Canada, Brazil, Europe, etc. So this organic question that arises in the mind of our viewers is, does the concept of prenuptial agreement arise in India? Are prenups valid in India?
Right. Subathra, you asked a very valid question relating to whether prenups are recognized and valid in India. It must be noted that in India, marriages are governed by a respective personal laws such as Hindu Marriage Act, Muslim Personal Law, etc. Also, India being a traditional country, marriage is considered morally sacred. There is an absoluteness to the institution of marriage, such that when one gets into a marriage, one does not look at what he or she will get if he gets out of the marriage. Now, that is what is outlined in a prenup. Yeah.
Okay. So, Sandhya, adding to it, the main issue here is there is no express law which is governing prenuptial agreements in India. So when there is an absence of any specific law, obviously it gets governed by the Indian Contract Act, since prenups are also agreements or contracts. Right. So the courts will investigate only into the public policy clause under the Contract Act. So when the enforcement of the contract, it will be detrimentally affecting the public interest, welfare, integrity and morality, then such contract will not be enforced even if it is valid. right? So affecting the public policy is a very subjective approach, and different courts today have taken varying views in cases involving prenups. Now, for an instance, in the case of Krishna Iyer versus Balamal, which dates several years back, the husband sought for the restitution of conjugal rights after the wife refused to live with him. So they got into a compromise agreement wherein the wife would live with the husband, right? So if she refused to live with him, he said that he would pay a sum of rupees 350. So despite this agreement was put into place, the wife did not return. So the husband's promise to pay that alimony in the case of future separation was deemed to be void because it was viewed as contrary to the public policy.
Right. That's an interesting case that you mentioned, but if we had to look at another case, this is also an older case, Muhammad Khan versus Shamali. Now, Muhammad married Shamali after entering into a contract that he would live in his wife's parental home and serve them. Should he leave the marriage, then the contract said that he would have to bear the entire expenses of the marriage. Then he would have to do that. Okay. Now, however, Muhammad left his wife and her parental home for a period of 4 years. On his return, as per the contract, he was asked to bear the entire expenses of the marriage, which he refused. Okay.
Right.
When this matter went to court, the court held that in Muslim personal law, the practice of a husband living in his wife's parental home was normal, a practice which was followed and acceptable under the Muslim personal law. And there was nothing violative of the Muslim personal law or its public policy. Hence, the prenup in this case was upheld as being valid and not against public policy.
Right. So despite such varying views, Indian courts have largely not at all recognized the prenups as valid contracts due to the sacrament of the institution of marriage and also the abuse of public policy. So the lawful object here is one of the prerequisite of a valid contract, right? So an object which is unlawful, if it is not, it is of the opinion of the courts, if it is immoral or against the public policies, it is not valid. So like any other contract, prenups must fulfill this requisite condition of a valid contract in India.
Right. Subathra, you mentioned that prenups are not recognized or valid in India. We just discussed a couple of cases. As I understand, the only exception is the state of Goa, the only state.
Right.
Prenups are officially recognized and legally binding under the Portuguese Civil Code. Obviously, because Goa was a colony of Portugal, and Portugal per se validates prenuptial agreements. There's a law for it. Okay. Now, as you mentioned, despite all this, there are no known prenup agreements between high-profile people or celebrities in India. Whereas world over, there have been many such celebrity prenup agreements. Some are talked about, most others are private. For instance, singer Beyonce and her rapper husband Jay-Z signed a prenup which not only demarcated their individual assets, that is, assets they earned before they got married to each other, but it also fixed an amount to be paid by him to her for every year that they were married, should they separate after a certain period of time, right? So let's say they, hypothetically, if they wanted to separate anytime before 15 years, then for every single year that they were married, an amount was fixed to be paid to Beyonce. Okay. Besides, there was a separate payout for each of the children that they had together. Right. This was in addition to their education and child support and all that. Also, and the most talked about clause was the financial implication in the event of infidelity. Now, the cheating clause in the prenup was widely talked about.
I think that is a very key aspect.
Yeah, the cheating clause, actually, interestingly, the clause relating to cheating was also contained in the prenup agreement between actors Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, way before Beyonce and Jay-Z got into one.
Right. The most often asked question, Sandhya, are prenups only about money? right? So the answer is not always. While it plays a major role, prenups are not only about money, liability of the debt raised by one on the other, the child custody, co-ownership of businesses if they have started it together,
Right.
it can be entrepreneurship, division of their digital assets, in fact, to a large extent, the social media ownership, cryptocurrencies, even it goes to the extent of pet custody that can be part of the prenups. So even frozen eggs for future reproduction can also be part of prenup.
Right. Subhadra, another burning question is whether prenups are needed at all, right? Though our country has a traditional outlook, society's changing dynamic in India also cannot be ignored. With the Gen Zs, you know how it is, with increase in divorce, increase in remarriages, the phrase family now includes a blended family with children from previous marriages coming together as a new family. Also, there is the issue of when an Indian person or an NRI marries a foreigner across the country. So we also need to see whether that country has a law where a prenup is, governed. So though India is yet to have an exclusive law on prenups, in the last couple of years, family courts have actually time and again been observing and been fairly vocal about wanting to recognize the concept of prenuptial agreements or contracts, mainly to ensure clarity and transparency in marriages in such a way that make it less messy if and when the couples choose to separate. Actually, I think this may also lead to saving the court's precious time, right? So, from all these aspects, if you see, it is time to for the governments to take a look at prenuptial agreements or contracts and at least give them a recognition in such a way that they are beneficial in the realm of the new family, right? We hope our viewers have found this topic and discussion around it interesting. We hope to be back with more. Thank you for watching.
Thank you. Bye bye.